Hello, welcome to my Magicka Warden 1vx build for the Update 36 Firesong patch. This is a burst damage focused build, decent mitigation, decent sustain, decent mobility, really good healing. It's kind of got a bit of everything and it's worked out really well for me. So we're going to take a look at the sets. Got Griffin's Ferocity, Ice Staff Sharpened, the Frost damage glyph on the front. This gives us Minor Force and Minor Expedition, basically whenever you light attack or hit anybody with an ability on your front bar. Back bar, we've got Rallying Cry, Sword and Board. You can use any one-hander, it doesn't matter. I have a dagger, because that's what I had. I've got Nirnhoned here and a weapon damage glyph. You could go defending if you want more mitigation. I go Nirnhoned because it increases your healing, especially on heals over time that'll carry over to your front bar. And I would recommend using a weapon damage glyph because you want a frost glyph on the front bar for the burst, so it's good to have the weapon damage here. And then we've got the Shield, Prismatic Enchant, Reinforced. You can put a Magicka glyph here if you want a little bit more stats on the back bar. I just had a Prismatic and I didn't feel like changing it. Reinforced is crucial though, you definitely want Reinforced. Battle Org, we've got Heavy Head and Heavy Shoulder, both impenetrable, both triglyphs. This is a trainee chest, the Gallant Chain. It's Reinforced, Heavy, so that's 3 pieces of Heavy. Triglyph as well. Rallying Cry, Sash, well-fitted triglyph. Rallying Cry gloves, well-fitted triglyph. Griffin's legs, well-fitted triglyph. And then Rallying Cry shoes, well-fitted triglyph. So this build ends up being 3 light armor, 3 heavy armor, 1 medium, and it's 4 well-fitted, 2 impen, reinforced chest. The jewelry, we've got the Serpent's Coil, swift spell damage, Griffin's Ring, Bloodthirsty spell damage, and then a second Griffin's Ring, Swift spell damage. If you want a little bit more healing, you can swap out the Bloodthirsty for 1 infused. I would recommend using the 2 Swift though, because we really need to counter the snare from the Serpent Coil. If you don't know what this does, whenever you take damage while at full health, you get 10 seconds of Berserk and Courage, which increases your damage by a ton. So it's a really strong mythic for increasing your damage if you're on a class that can counter the snare, the 40% snare that it applies to you. So really good set there. We are a Breton on this build. I would recommend being a Breton. Mag sustain is pretty tough on Warden, even with the Netch. I found Breton to be the best in slot choice for me. Other choices you could go with would be Khajiit and maybe High Elf, in that order. But if you have the option, I definitely would probably go Breton on this build. Stage 3 Vamp. Every PvP build should be a Stage 3 Vamp for Undeath. Apprentice Mundus, spell damage. You can go Shadow if you want more crit damage and crit healing. I just found the Apprentice to be more consistent on this build. And then the Bear Haunch Food. The attributes as well, sorry. 14 Stam, 4 health, 46 mag. This gets me up to 17k Stam on my front bar, 30k health, and whatever mag is left over. You can see there. 17k even stam, 30k even health, or 30.5, and then 24k mag. I like to hit the 30k health threshold and the 17k stam threshold. I just feel comfortable with those. If you don't care about the stam, you can take these points and put them into health or mag. I definitely would recommend hitting 30k health, though. I think it's worthwhile. Looking at the CP. Fighting Finesse. Focused Mending. Master at Arms. Wrathful Strikes. If you feel like you need more mitigation on this setup, because I do play it a little bit squishier, you can drop Wrathful Strikes and put on Ironclad, which is 6% direct damage mitigation. Over here I've got Celerity, Survival Instincts, Pain's Refuge, Sustained by Suffering. I wouldn't swap any of these out. These are all pretty much, I think, the best options you can choose on this build. Looking at the skills, Deep Fissure. Everybody should know what this does. The burst ability gives us major and minor pen, so it's really important that you land this on someone before going for a burst on them. Hits twice, so if you land the first one, the second one's going to hit a lot harder. Bird of Prey, Snare Immunity, Major Expedition, and for being slotted you get Minor Berserk. Really good. Ice Fortress, this is the armor buff. Arterial Burst is our melee spammable. And LE Weapon is our range spammable. I'm going to talk more about these later, but oftentimes we're going to be using these in combination with one another, so I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Dawnbreaker. This is the best choice for the front bar ult, in my opinion. On the back, we've got Netch. This is Magicka Sustain. It also purges an effect from us every 5 seconds, and it gives us our Major Brutality and Sorcery. Vigor, heal over time, Minor Resolve. Lotus Blossom, this is the 60-second morph of this ability. It heals for slightly less than the other one, but I think the increased duration is worth the slightly less healing. It also gives us Major Savagery and Prophecy, so this way we don't have to use crit pots on this build. Arctic, this is like a quasi-burst heal, stun, AoE, dot. It does a lot. Primarily, it's there as the stun and the burst heal on our back bar. It's not the best burst heal. It's a bit lower than a lot of other burst heals in the game, but it still is decent for that purpose. It also stuns people off us in an AoE. It does frost damage every 2 seconds that can apply chilled. It has a much higher chance of proccing chilled, so it's a really good skill overall. Definitely worth the slot. Then we've got Leeching Vines. We go with this morph because it applies the lifesteal to people. It's a heal over time. Whenever you get hit, you get healed. This morph applies the lifesteal, which is going to give us even more consistent healing. And since we're using Arctic Blast, which does AoE frost damage, it's basically going to be proccing the lifesteal, on cooldown. So these two skills work really well together. I prefer Leeching Vines when I'm using Arctic. If you were using Polar Wind, I would go with the other morph here. And then Northern Storm on the back bar. It's just an AoE pressure ult. There's some scenarios where you're going to want to use a Northern Storm rather than a Dawnbreaker, so it's good to have it. And we get resistances on our back bar since it's a Winter's Embrace ability. Two quick things I forgot to mention. We are using Tripots as the consumable. You definitely want to use Tripots, although if you can afford it, Heroism Pots are actually much, much stronger than Tripots. These are going to give you more damage because more Balorg. Going to give you quicker ults and the same sustain that a Tripot would give you. So if you can afford it, these are the best pots by a mile. If you're like me and you can't afford them, just use Tripods. And then the last thing, I did forget to mention this in my Hybrid Nightblade video, so we're just tossing this extra clip in here before I forget. You do not want passives in Trifocus. When you put passives in here and you have an Ice Staff, it makes it so when you block, it costs mag. You do not want to do that. You want to block with your stamina, so do not put passives in here. The only thing you lose out is this passive that says fully charged Ice Staff heavy attacks, give you a damage shield. That doesn't matter. The times when that's going to mitigate any damage at all are few and far between. It's just not even worth getting. Okay, so next up, I just wanted to briefly talk about the offense and why I'm using 2 spammables on this build. So Magdan's problem seems to historically be it can't really finish kills well because it doesn't have a good execute to use. So what I've done to counter that is I'm using Ellie Weapon and stacking 2 spammables into 1 global cooldown to try and increase the burst damage I can do to someone. What I mean by that is if you were to just use Ellie Weapon and to weave it like this, you'll always buff the light attack that you used before the Ellie Weapon, right? And if you just used Arterial, it looks like this. However, what you can do is you can Ellie Weapon without a light attack, right? So instead of light attacking first, I'm just Ellie Weaponing, and then you can light attack Arterial. So Ellie Weapon, light attack Arterial. And you'll see that I get all of those damage numbers. Like that. So that's 2 spammables going off in 1 global cooldown, technically. So that's going to allow us to deal much higher bursts in 1 global cooldown. We aren't always going to do that. Sometimes we're just going to spam Ellie Weapon, or we're going to, spam Arterial if we're up close. But when we're going for a burst on someone, whether it's with Dawnbreaker or whether it's with Arterial, we're always going to pre-buff an Ellie Weapon and then go for the burst. Same thing with Dawnbreaker. And obviously we're going to be timing that with Shulks as well. So that's going to help us finish targets off because we can do much larger bursts. And also, if someone roll dodges in front of you, instead of trying to hit them with a Arterial and missing, you can do a Ellie Weapon while they're in the roll dodge and then light attack Arterial when they come out and hit them a lot harder. So when we're timing it with the Shulk, if you're trying to hit it with the first Shulk, it would be Shulk, wait 1 second, Ellie Weapon, light attack Arterial. If you're waiting for the second Shulk, you'd wait till it's about 1.5 seconds. And same deal, Ellie Weapon, light attack Arterial. Remember that if you're trying to do this burst, you do not want to light attack before pressing the LE weapon, because if you do that, it's going to... the LE weapon's going to proc on that light attack. You're skipping a light attack when you do this burst, so we're just LE weapon and then light attack arterial. Same thing if you're doing an alt. It's LE weapon and then light attack Dawnbreaker. I found that combo to just be really useful. It lets me deliver much higher bursts than I'm typically able to on Magden. So I really felt that this was the best way to solve the issue of not being able to burst or finish people off on their low health. The other option of a skill you can use instead of LE weapon is Cliff Racer. This is sort of a very long travel time ability, so you can almost do the same sort of stacking of damage that you can do with LE weapon. This also can give you up to 500 weapon damage if you hit someone and set them off balance, but they have to be 7 meters away, so it's a little bit weird. But it is a very good skill. The only problem with this skill is that it's extremely easy to dodge because of how long the travel time is. Basically, at any point from the time you move your hand back in the animation, if they dodge roll at any point, it's just going to miss. So I found it to just be kind of clunky and difficult to use 1vx, and I found LE weapon to be a lot more applicable. That being said, this will still give you more stats if you use this one, so it's up to you. And then again, you can kind of do the same damage stacking that you can do with LE weapon, just because of how long the travel time is. So you can kind of see it stacks up pretty nicely. So it's up to you. If you want to use this, you can. It's going to be a little bit more rough on your sustain. LE weapon, if you miss the light attacks, it actually refunds most of the cost to you. Obviously, this skill doesn't do that. But ultimately, it's going to be your decision based on what you want. I just personally prefer LE weapon because I like the way it stacks into Dawnbreaker and stuff like that. The only other offensive stuff there is to really note is that you want to keep Arctic Blast up as a dot. Obviously, it's an AoE dot. It's going to increase your healing because it'll proc lifesteal on vines. And it'll apply chilled to people, especially when you're on your front bar. This skill has a very high chance to proc chilled. I mean, if you look at the top, I've already procced it twice, 3 times, 4 times. So you can see that this skill procs chilled very, very frequently. And when you're on your front bar, if you proc chilled, you get brittle. Brittle is 10% crit damage, so you want to keep this skill up all the time just to help with the pressure on people. It's definitely worth doing. And then the last bit of offensive information is just choosing between Dawnbreaker and Northern Storm. Dawnbreaker is much better for bursting targets, whereas Northern Storm is much better for pressuring targets. So on a target that you think you can burst, you're going to go for the Dawnbreaker. On a target that you can't burst, that you need to wear down, you're going to want to try to pressure them with Northern Storm. And then in outnumbered scenarios, if you're fighting multiple squishy players, Northern Storm tends to be better because you can pressure all of them at once. And if you're fighting less squishy players, Dawnbreaker tends to be better because you need to kill them much faster or else they just heal through all the damage you do to them. So, and I guess we can also talk about the Shulks real quick. The Shulks, they go off twice now. They go off the first time after 3 seconds. They go off the second time 6 seconds later. They both apply Major and Minor Pen, and the second one hits a bit harder than the first one. So, a lot of the time, you're going to want to try to go for a burst on the second one, but you also want to land the first one so that the second one hits harder. So, landing the first one is going to apply the pen, and that means that the second one is going to benefit both from the increased damage that it has and the extra pen that you've already applied to them. So just center your bursts around that. If you're on PC, you can get Bandit's UI to track it. That's what that little square is on my screen there. If you're on console, you're kind of going to have to just watch the icon on the little console buff tracker. Unfortunately, there's no better way to track it, so. And lastly, just general survivability information on this class. It has really good passive healing. Just from, we've got the vines, we've got the burst heal on Northern Storm, we've got the Lotus Blossom for our light attack, so you have a lot of passive healing on this class that you can just kind of keep up all the time. I would recommend doing that. One thing that you can also do, some people don't know about this, is that every time you cast the Netch, you get a heal, and it purges one effect from you. You can see right there. You can do this infinitely. It doesn't cost anything, so In situations where you're being pressured and you've already cast your heals, so you've already got your vines, your vigor up, all your buffs are up, you can actually just start pressing the netch, and then, if you're kiting, you can press sprint after every cast. And this is going to give you an extra heal over time, technically, and it's going to purge one effect from you every time you cast it. So this is a really good thing to do if you need that little bit of extra healing and pressure relief and you've already used all your other abilities. Obviously, you would want to prioritize getting vigor or getting vines up because that will do a lot more healing. But once you have those things up, just spamming the netch can be really beneficial. Outside of that, there really isn't a lot to it on this class. You just want to keep all your heals up all the time if you can. You want to stun people off you with Arctic. You can use Arctic to get to full health to proc Serpent's Coil as well. And then as far as mobility goes, you're going to have the Serpent Coil snare on you, which means you're going to be a bit slower. But then we have Griffins, which gives us 15%. We have 2 Swift, which gives us another 14, totaling 29. And then we've got Celerity, which is 10, totaling 39. We also reduce the effectiveness of the snare by a small amount because of this passive right here. So just off of Griffins and our passives, we're slightly faster than we are at base when we're snared. And then once we press Wings, you get a lot more mobility. Like when you press Wings, you're like 30% faster than base move speed, even with the Serpent Coil snare on you. So whenever you need to kite outnumbered, you want to make sure that your Griffins is procced by light attacking something on your front bar. So like even just like one light attack like this, that gets my Griffins procced. And then you just want to press Wings and start kiting. Wings gives you like 4 seconds of snare immunity, so pressing it and then kiting for 4 seconds and then pressing it again would be advantageous if you have the Serpent Coil procced on you. You're going to notice that if the Serpent Coil actually goes down and you're not at full health, you move insanely fast on this build because we're building to counter a 40% snare. So if the coil isn't on you, you start moving very, very quickly. So something to keep in mind. You can actually send yourself flying off ledges and shit if you're not careful. That's going to be it for this build video. There's going to be some gameplay dropping this week. I've got a couple clips to put together in an upcoming Outnumbered series video, so keep an eye out for that. Drop a like, comment, sub if you're interested in the content and you want to see more. And if you want to watch me live, I stream 2 to 3 times weekly over at twitch.tv/reactfaster. So come on over and drop a follow if you're interested in seeing me live. Thanks for checking me out, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.